and welcome to Web Vibes Only. We've been talking a lot about signals and its impact on Angular. It has definitely changed the scope of state management. And one major library that we've been seeing has made a major impact to the state management story is the NgRx with its Signal Store. I'm Ankita, and with me we have Caller Johnson, and we're going to get into it.
Yep, I'm excited to get into it. A lot of good stuff coming from NgRx team over the years, and this is another continuation of that.
Yeah, if you haven't noticed, probably because you've been living under a rock, but Signal Store is literally the only store that everyone can talk about these days.
It combines a lot of things that I think the NgRx team has learned over the course of years of building state management solutions. And if you've been with NgRx for the long haul back in the original days, I think you've seen this evolution over time, that they went from something that was pretty complex but very, very traceable. In the early days, they were pretty clear that NgRx was intended for complex state solutions, rapidly changing state solutions that you needed things like time travel debugging for, and the traceability that actions provide in order to justify the complexity to your code. A lot of people overused that. They defaulted to NgRx, and they blamed the library for complexity. The alternative that most people should have defaulted to in those days was just a regular Angular service with state. Now, you did have to do a lot of that kind of state handling stuff yourself. Like, you had to create the behavior subjects, and if you wanted to get defensive with it, you didn't expose the behavior subject that held your state itself. You would that would be a private property on the service, and then you would expose that with a read-only observable, and then you would subscribe using the async byte wherever you needed that. So you would kind of have to roll your own little state solution, and I think Angular was pretty good with that. But as our state management solutions evolved over time, we needed a little bit more than what we felt comfortable rolling out of the box. And that's kind of a lot of work to do. We started seeing other frameworks with their state management solutions, a lot of which felt a little bit simpler, had kind of a tried and true path out of the box. And it kind of felt like Angular, being the batteries included opinionated framework that it is, kind of was missing opinions about how state management should work, right? And I think NgRx, their next iteration was Component Store, and I think that came really close. To be honest, Signal Store isn't far from that. Signal Store is a Signal implementation that is very similar to Component Store, with a few added benefits that improves its flexibility and its synchronous access to state.
Yeah, Signal Store was added a few versions ago, but only recently in the latest version have we seen more features that really enhance the experience of setting up a state management solution that's fully driven based off signals. And that's what caught us our attention, and we want to talk about it. Things like the linked state or the events. We came up with an example to demo it, and we'll talk through it more to share why we think that is more valuable than trying to set it up your own way. If we have all these lifecycle hooks within the store, especially with state and with methods. And we can also have with computed, in which you can compute the properties for deriving slices of your state. And all of that is great and helpful. However, it's when you get to link state that things really start to wow you about the simplicity and the power of this solution.
Yeah, that's definitely a favorite of mine, being able to derive its value from a signal. And then also you get the benefits of a computed signal with the ability to override it when necessary. That's a huge win. Another thing I really like about Signal Store is its rxMethod. That allows you to capitalize on what RxJS does really well, managing asynchronous tasks. And you still get synchronous access to your state. It gives you an observable pipeline that you can do things like debounce. If you're doing a search query, you have all the power of RxJS at your fingertips. Switch maps, concat maps to handle your request. All you have to do to make this reactive is pass it a reference to a signal, and it'll automatically re-execute that method anytime the signal changes.
Yeah, and it's really important to remember that as it's reflective in this deal, like RxJS is never going to get replaced by Signal, and this just provides a powerful solution to be able to combine both RxJS and signals and be able to leverage the benefits of both. Because sometimes you do need those powerful RxJS operators, and you need to be able to tap into their APIs to be able to either get an updated value from your store, or just perform all sorts of operations like switch map and concat map. Those can never be replaced by signals, at least not yet. So as signals are itself evolving, but RxJS have already solved so much of our asynchronous needs that we are just able to tap into them using Rx methods, and they just work wonderfully.
Yeah, really seamless interop there.
Yeah, Signal Store itself has evolved so much since its first version that some parts of it now feels like a complete solution, and some parts of it are also very similar to what it used to be when we had a global store, like an entity based store. We're here for all of it because it's really easy to use. Let's look at the example that we have for you here. So it is a bookstore, and we are leveraging the Open Library API. Here's the interface. You can search based on any keyword, whether it's the book title, an author, or just the general genre of a book that you are interested in. Okay, so this is how the app works. You can search for just anything, and I'll show you all the books that are underneath this API. And you can share these search results. And the cool part about that is that if you share, and let me actually let me close all these things over here because we need to have as much space as possible. So if I actually load the link again from the share results, you notice that there was no API call made again because it doesn't load it again. And so when you search for something, say Jack, and it'll make the call to that API and get all the books that are here that either have the author Jack, the title Jack, or something about Jack. Or if you search for mystery, I'm not spelling that right. I'm just gonna go thriller because my brain cannot spell mystery right now. And you can see that it makes that request to load it, and then if you share the results and you hit enter, you see that you don't see that query anymore. So that's one feature. Another feature is that if you search for something, it kind of shows up under your recent search results also, and you can keep adding to your search results over here. Like if you go back, all your recent search results will keep showing up here. And I think we have it set so up to 6 search results, recent search results will show up here, so that then if you want to load it and share it with someone, you easily can. And it's just more efficient like that. And then it's just a simple app to be able to search or look up any book, title, author, anything like that, and be able to share the results of something that you want to share with your friends. So that's the interface part of it. And let's see how we've implemented it.
Yeah, so we have two main stores here. There's the bookstore and there's the history store. So the bookstore is going to do the thing where, okay, it takes the search string and signal that we have, and it's going to call a method on the signal store. That method on the signal store is going to use rxMethod to make an HTTP request to get the data from the Open Library API, and it's going to update our state in our signal store with that. And so we have some other things here that we'd like to show. Like, notice when we were loading the states, we had this kind of like a skeleton loader. So we're managing loading states with this setup. And one of the features that I'd like to call your attention to here is what we call a custom store in Signal Store. And basically what we've done is we created a subset of a store and we called it request status, I think we called it. So we're going to have stores all across our app, right? Most of our apps are going to have many requests, many stores, and we're going to want to have all of that same like request status tracking logic, like is pending, is success, or is failure. We're going to want to track that for every request, right? So instead of re-implementing that everywhere, you can create a custom store, and then you can just read that custom store in there, and you basically get all of that logic. You get it in any store with one line of code after that. So this is our with request status custom store. And now if you go back over to the bookstore and you see up toward the top, you'll see a pretty simple line, and it's just going to say with request status. And that tracks the request status of the request for with a key of search. So when we go, like, let's say this store is handling multiple requests. If I want to do another request for, say, save item or something like that, I'm saving my favorites to a database. I can add another with request status, and the key with that would be save, right? So you get an individual instance of that custom store for each time you use that here. So you don't have to re-implement that logic. There's no managing an array of request statuses like we do in the NgRx days. So it's really powerful to use this here. And that's a custom store. This custom store will automatically give you the computeds you need to see is whether the request is pending and that sort of stuff. So it's a really cool feature to use. Very well documented in the NgRx Signal Store if any of you guys want to take a look at that. So I guess the other thing that we need to do is when we load a query result, we want to notify the history store. We want to notify the history store, right? We could keep this in the same store, and maybe that makes sense to keep history state in the same bookstore since it's loading books and it's books history. In larger applications, history and the context there could get rather large. So maybe you want to separate those and you want to keep them decoupled because you wouldn't want to inject one store into another, and then you could run into situations where you have circular references. So that was one thing that we really liked with NgRx. So to avoid that kind of coupling, we could just dispatch an action, and somewhere would be listening to that. An effect, reducers, that sort of thing would be listening to that action. Well, you can kind of do the same thing here with Signal Store. So if we go to the Books API events on search success, we dispatch this event. And if we go to history events now, that's just a remove item. If we go to history store, we can see that it's using with reducer to listen for that search success and automatically saves and manages those items for us. So this is how we can kind of leverage that kind of misdirection to prevent tight coupling of things with Signal Store. But unlike with the old school NgRx store that you kind of had to use that pattern everywhere, it kind of got complex, even in spots that didn't really need that misdirection. So Signal Store kind of offers the best of both worlds. It has it here when you need it, but if you don't need it, you don't have to add it. It doesn't lock you into that pattern. This is a more minimalistic pattern. Bring in what you need, and I think it's great. It's simple. There's almost no boilerplate here. Across all frameworks that I've used, React, Svelte, everything, this is actually my favorite state management solution.
Yeah, me too, by far. That always used to be the one thing that people would always complain about. Oh, NGRX, so much boilerplate, so much boilerplate. Like, boilerplate almost became synonymous with NGRX, but not anymore. I think this is such a clean solution to be able to update another store based on something that the store is just listening to using events, the event group. Because if you think about it, that's what's happening. It's an event. Learning about all these terminologies like actions and reducer and all of that would also feel like a big hurdle for people who are just getting into NGRX and learning that solution. But this is just so much more simpler terminology and a cleaner approach to be able to build and maintain and understand and track a simple state management solution. And of course, this example is a minimalistic example of what you would have, like the bookstore and the history store, basic small stores, but they can get really complex with a lot going on here. And so being able to track like what exact action or event should update another store can get really tricky. And so that's why it's so much more cleaner to have a separate file in which everything is being tracked and you can just look up for it, like, oh, where is it being used, and then you just notice what it's listening to and how it's being maintained like that. So yeah, it's a solid solution, and we love implementing it and using it. And similarly, being able to share just the status, because you always have want to be able to show a loading indicator or an error message. Like those things are common across almost every application that you will ever build in your life. So being able to have a shared request status in your app for consistency, I think it just improves user experience tremendously by implementing simple features like that with ease within NgRx.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a really great iteration of state. And the NgRx team has been managing state and thinking about a front end state for a long time. And everything that they've shipped over the years has gotten better and better. And I've been impressed so many times along the way. Signal Store really takes the cake. It is genius in the way that it approaches State Store with this kind of minimalist feel, but still opinionated in what we expect from Angular. The interop with RxJS to signals feels seamless. Signal Store is, it feels like is the missing piece to the Angular framework, to be honest. And
Yeah.
it feels like such a natural extension that, and it's one of the first things that I bring in anytime I'm building an Angular app.
Right, because eventually we do need to reach for it, even though you might think like, oh, I can now have signals that it can just manage state with my local component and as a local state. But eventually, as your app grows, you do need to reach for something, and the NGRX team has done a fabulous job keeping it up to date with the latest Angular patterns and evolving it based on the current needs of what an application might need. So it's great.
Yeah. So if you're an Angular developer and you haven't checked this out yet, or you don't have any direct experience with it, you've been kind of stuck in NGRX land, definitely take a look at this. Take a look at what you can do with it. It's well worth the investment of time. And, if you don't need that extreme traceability to warrant the complexity of NGRX, this is something you should really look at migrating to. And in the world of AI is pretty good at migrating those features to Signal Store. It's
Yeah, I was
worth
I'm
trying
glad
out.
you mentioned that because I was going to mention that AI is really good at using, especially because it's so well documented, even if it ends up using not the kind of solution that you would want to, if you just nudge it in the direction like, oh, I would like to use events and groups for this solution. It just does a fabulous job. Any LLM does that. It'll just read through. I understand how it's being managed and be able to build it up for you with ease so you don't really have to struggle with it. I hope you found this helpful. Please leave a comment about your experience and we will love to hear that as you always do. And if there's another signal based state management solution that you think is worth everyone's attention, definitely let us know. We will love to play around with it and share our experience with it as well. So until next time, see ya.